I want to talk about this guy, the Zhiyun Crane. This is probably not how you're supposed to handle it. I don't care. This sucker's a powerhouse. This is version 2 of the crane. I picked it up about 2 months ago before an overseas trip where it was going to be renting this for 2 weeks was just a little bit under the cost of buying it. So I went ahead without ever trying it, picked it up. And for the price, it's unbelievable. I owned the DJI Ronin for 3 years, I'd say, 2 years maybe, and it came out of the case maybe 5 times. The reason for that was it was just such a pain in the ass to set up. It always took 15 to 20 minutes, whereas this thing, I just turn it on and start shooting. Balancing is really, and I've used this thing so much in the month or so that I've had it. But though the price is low for the simple setup here, where it's just a one-hand kind of dealio, there's a lot of accessories out there for this, officially from the company, and there's a lot of other things. I decided about a few weeks ago to spring for the two-handed handle set, which is a really valuable tool. It's great, but once you get it, you're going to notice there's some things missing. So I'm going to just drop this sucker in here, and it tightens right up with this little wing nut. This is probably not how you're supposed to use this stuff. That's how I treat my gear, and that's why it breaks a lot. So here it is with the 2 handles on, and the problem with using it like this is you lose that access to the middle controls. So what do? You get a remote control. Now, if you've got the Zhiyun Assistant app, that's great, but it's a cell phone app. You could, I guess, tape it to the bars or something. So you might want to pick up a controller. Now, when I was looking about a month ago for the controllers, this was the only one on the market. This thing runs about 35 US, about 50 bucks Canadian. It feels so cheap. Getting this and knowing how much I paid for it was frustrating because while it does work and it works great, it just feels like it's going to fall apart at any minute. Now, having said that, it's been fine, but again, it was a case of how do I get this on here so that I could easily use it. A few days after I bought it, this showed up online, and that was the ZWB02, ZWB01. This is the ZWB02. This one's definitely better build quality, much closer to the joystick that is on the Zhiyun Crane itself. And it also comes with this cool little mount, which is very similar to the one that the DJI Ronin had for their thumb controller. Just clips on with a GoPro kind of mount here. And your remote just kind of clicks in, and unlike the DJI Ronin, it's got these little grooves in the side here. I don't know if you can see that. Whoops. It's got these little bits that come out, and they stick into grooves in the controller, so that keeps it in there, because with the Ronin thumb controller would fall out constantly. Highly recommend this controller over this one, though there are some reports that it turns off after 2 minutes. I haven't used it enough to notice that yet. That could be a pain in the ass, but it's definitely better build quality than this one, and they run the same price. Very, very similar pricing. But now, if you're using this guy, still another problem that you still have to press record up here. Now what do you do about that? Well, I'm using the GH5 and the GH4, and these have this 2-inch cable. I mean, this thing is tiny. It ran me about 30 bucks Canadian, so probably about 25 US. But it is really handy. It's just plugs into the remote slot here of your camera. So it plugs into the remote slot of the camera. And then back here, there is a tiny little USB port on the crane itself that this connects to. And When you turn this guy on, and he's facing the wrong way, now when you turn the camera on and you turn now when you turn the camera on and when you turn the crane on, you can hit record just by pressing the camera button, the shutter button on here or on the remote itself. So really handy instead of reaching up here, because it does unbalance you a bit, especially if you don't have some kind of harness holding you in. Also, if you're someone who sets your camera to autofocus when you're on a gimbal, hitting wide or tight the little shuttle either up or down will autofocus onto whatever's in front of the gimbal. So could be handy. I personally keep it on manual focus and just keep it a f7.1 or something if I can. So the cable definitely is worth it, even though it seems kind of insane to pay $30 for a 3-inch tiny little cable. It's just such a proprietary thing that it does come in handy. Boo! Another thing I wanted to mention about these handles is I was looking at how I would mount a monitor to this guy, and I was thinking of getting a clamp on here and then mounting the monitor this way. I found a better solution, and that's simply this. There's screw holes here, 1/4-20 screw holes on the sides. So what I've done is taken a double-ended 1/4-20 screw. I've mounted it to a little tripod head here, and I just screw it into the side. And from there, I've mounted the plate to the bottom of my monitor. And from there, I've mounted the plate to the bottom of my monitors, in this case the Blackmagic Video Assist. And just drop it in here. And there you go. You've got a nice big monitor for focusing. You're definitely going to have to rebalance the camera once you plug the HDMI cable into the camera, just because it's going to add a little weight this way. I highly recommend a very thin and flexible cable, because a cable like this is a bit too stiff and ends up fighting your balance on the gimbal. But it's a great way if you want to be able to focus. I mean, the best part about the Crane is possibly that with the GH5 you can have your screen out to the side so you can see without interference. But for focus, it's not always the best, safest bet. So that's how I use the Zhiyun Crane. That's how I have it set up now. Pretty cool, pretty good. That's it. Is this helpful for you? I don't know. Now, all that to say, just the Crane on its own is a damn good tool. All these things, they might help me out on a bigger shoot, but you really don't need them. The Crane on its own, for the very low price, I've seen it as low as $500 US. This thing is absolutely one of the best tools I've ever purchased. It's small enough that you can stick it in a backpack, and it's also not super conspicuous. I was in some touristy spots and I was able to bring it out, and no one really, they stared at me a little bit, but it wasn't like, oh, what's that guy doing with that crazy gigantic thing? It was just a little bit of curiosity. So it was pretty cool to have a tool that really makes life magical. That's me saying things. Good night.